Hi all, Hippo here. Today I'm doing a bit of a different video because I want to take a closer look at the old game Battlestations Pacific and what made that game so great, and perhaps what Legends could perhaps again learn from this nearly 12-year-old game now. And obviously Battlestations Pacific has a huge single player segment with a Japanese campaign and a US campaign and the skirmish and all that usual stuff. The single player campaigns are great, and that's something that Legends could at least have a look at. I know it's primarily a multiplayer game, but all the videos and the whole feel of Pacific just makes it more of an experience to play, and you get more into the old, like the whole mood, just like when you're watching an old World War II movie. Um, Everything is quite well done. There's old footage from the war, and the Japanese campaign is totally made up, but that's fine. The U.S. campaign is pretty much historically accurate, pretty much as much as you can make it in a video game anyway. And each mission has like objectives, and they're usually historical objectives. And you'll recognize some of the ships from Legends, for example, Monahan here. And of course, hidden objectives. So if you are able to do these, you will unlock extra ships like Super Yamato and Montana and stuff like that. It's really cool. So one thing Legends could definitely take a cue from Pacific on is it's having a few historical missions, just a few, where you work together with other players to, for example, win the Battle of Java Sea, for example. Just some random things here I'm just thinking of. Another thing I like about Pacific is that there's actually people walking around the decks of the ships. If you look here, there's a few Japanese sailors walking around on this Mogami here, and they're not in a hurry, although they're under attack. But I mean, that's definitely something Legends could implement easily. Alright, so another thing Legends could implement is manual AA guns. And as you can see, Battlestations Pacific had that 12 years ago, so it's definitely not impossible. I know Legends are not built for it, but you never know. And I'm sure a lot of people here in the latest games facing the German AP carriers would probably give a lot to be able to shoot down the planes manually instead of relying on the AA, which is actually not very good, I think. I much prefer this approach here in Pacific, where you take control of the guns yourself. The ship just keeps sailing, and that way at least you have a little bit more control over which planes to target first, for example. So the next thing is something I've been going on about for years, and that really is we need better stats in Legends, and that is definitely not difficult to implement. And if you look at the 12-year-old game here, it already has it. And we need stats, and we need leaderboards, and we need very detailed of both. I want to see per ship, per map, per, well, pretty much anything I can think of. So that's definitely something that should be relatively easy to implement into Legends. And another thing that would be easy to implement is a unit identification browser, like this one here, where I know you can do that in your port, but you can only see the ships that you actually have there. So I think like a more coordinated approach to this would be better. And something that is definitely needed is some sort of help section, a naval academy as they call it in Pacific here, where the game tells you how to play. Basically, it's not a tutorial, but it is a like pretty much a manual. And sometimes you run into players in Legends that could really benefit from this. So I really think that is something that at least should be considered as an implementation into Legends in the future. So that brings us on to submarines, and I don't necessarily think that we need submarines in Legends. They are in Battlestations Pacific, and they are fun to play. But this game was also made with submarines in mind. I'm not sure if Legends has, well, if the developers were thinking of that back in the day. So I'm not sure. Um, And if they have to be implemented, they have to be implemented right. And now they are fun to play, of course, and in Pacific's multiplayer section, they really come into their own, which I'll get into a bit later in this video here. Carriers are, of course, available in Pacific as they are in Legends, and I mean, this was added in Legends just 2 months ago. So another really useful feature that Pacific has that Legends doesn't have is the ability to be matched with players of a certain level. So Pacific had ranks. Everybody was awarded a rank depending on how good they are at the game, basically. And when you're creating a multiplayer game, you can choose to only include players of a certain rank. I mean, how useful would that be in Legends, where you are constantly matched up with what would be an apprentice seaman here? Okay, so where this game really excels is the multiplayer section. And although Legends does a really good job at its take on multiplayer, then Pacific does a just as good job with its take on multiplayer. And it's kind of different because there's many different ways of playing multiplayer, like escort missions here, where you basically escort ships. Siege, where you're usually landing on an island and have to protect your landing forces. And competitive, and it's more like AI in Legends. And then there's duel, which is very similar to the actual standard battles in Legends. And the last one is island capture, which is the best part of this game. This could be a game in itself, and it pretty much is. Alright, so island capture here is usually 4 versus 4 players, and it's all about dominating a map. So you can set the game up to use large or small maps, and how many command points you want, which is basically how many units every player can have, and a time limit if you want that, and a point limit if you want that or don't want that. And if you take no time limit and no point limit, these battles can go on for hours. I remember playing one that was more than 14 hours back in the day, because this is a very strategic play instead of the more tactical play of Legends. And if you've been a very good player, you will be able to unlock what is the equivalent of premium ships here. Like, for example, the Super Yamato, which is a Yamato with 20-inch guns included in this game here. So island capture is all about capturing islands and defending the ones you already have. And on a huge map like some of these are, it can be very difficult, and it can take a long time to win the battles, which is really good if you're into that sort of thing. Now, both campaigns and multiplayer, you can choose to play the game from a map perspective here. And in island capture, only some islands will allow you to build some kind of units. So, for example, this middle island here is the only island that allows a player to build battleships. So, obviously, you'd like to cap that one. And what Pacific also allows is like a more strategic approach to the whole game. Here you can group units, and you can put them in formations, and you can do very detailed stuff. Now the actual ship-to-ship combat Legends does way better than Pacific. The gameplay here is a little bit too simplistic, because you don't have to aim or lead your target or anything like that. The game does that for you. So all you really have to do is get close enough to the enemies, and you have to get really close in this game, like a couple of kilometers, like 4 or 5 at the very most. And that's just not as good as in Legends at all. So this part of the game here, Legends beats Pacific hands down. It's like the mechanics are much better in Legends. That's not to say that this game isn't fun, but just that Legends does the actual fighting much better, much better. So in any game mode, you can jump into any ship on the map, of course, if it's your ship, that is. And you can either spend the whole thing in the overhead map and direct the AI units around, or you can jump into one of your AI units and take over control. And you can do that for planes and subs and carriers and battleships and cruisers, doesn't matter. So it makes it a very flexible game. So if you only like to play destroyers, for example, you can just let the AI take care of everything else and just fiddle around in your destroyers. Now, Battlestation Pacific is still for sale on Xbox Live, and it's cheap. It costs nearly nothing. And the multiplayer is still active. You can still play Island Capture. I still do it. There are a few downsides to this game, obviously, and in the overall Legends is much better. But they are targeting different play styles. Like Pacific is more strategic, and the Legends is more nitty gritty. And of course, Pacific has no customization at all. You cannot choose commanders or set up your ship the way you want. Here, a ship is just a ship. So take that into account. But these are some of the things that are in Battlestations Pacific that I would love to see incorporated into Legends. I don't know how realistic it is, but you can always hope. So that's the end of this video, and I hope you liked it. And I'll see you out there in Legends, that is.